What's up, creative community? Once again, this is Lorenzo from the Coach MC Studio, and this is another epic episode of Talks on Acting. And I can't wait to dive into this talk with SIDONIE SMITH today. Just let me tell you, she's a musical star, she's a viola player, she's a singer, she's an actress, she's a mindset coach, she's a beautiful person, she's so many things, and at the same time, a generous and great human being. So, welcome on the Coach MC Studio.
What a wonderful intro, thank you.
Absolutely, you deserve it. As I told your agent, she contacted us in the moment where we decided we have to do a show with a musical star. Because to me, musical is the ultimate frontier of romanticism, where you still can be romantic and still credible at the same time and empowering, through the music and the word. Tell us, how do you define romanticism? What is romanticism for you?
Oh man, I love how you talked about how it can be both authentic and otherworldly, and that's how I define it for myself. I'm allowed to take people on a journey that feels like it's elevated, like it's more than real life, but still speak directly to their souls, because at the end of the day, we want to see ourselves. When we take in entertainment, when we consume social media, when we go to the theater, there's something in us that wants to see us portrayed. That's why we all love the underdog, because somewhere in us, we're all kind of fighting and not always feeling like the hero that gets all of the things. We want to see the underdog win. We want to see ourselves win. So musical theater has that beautiful capability to be just elevated and so real at the same time.
Yes, I think the uplifting part about it, that all of a sudden you insert your melody, harmony, singing, right? That all of a sudden you open up this other door, this other gateway, and then you close it down and you just keep playing in a regular way as an actress, and then, jumping into these various segments of creativity, because as a musical star, you need to dance. You need sometimes, to sing like crazy. You need to be very fast. You need to act. You need to kind of fulfill more elements and more disciplines than, let's say, like a regular actor would do on stage. So I find this so hard, and I've dove into the musical world a lot of years ago. I lived in Stuttgart, and I kind of, my best man, present of my wedding, he's also from the musical world. He was casted by Roman Polanski for the Vampire Dance. So excited to have you on the show, because I think people can learn so much out of, to not narrow down their choices, to let, to use all the elements that they have, because musical is about using all those different elements. Don't you agree?
I totally agree. I feel like story is king, and I want to be a storyteller no matter what discipline is on my mind at the moment, because acting, singing, dancing, it's all storytelling. And yes, there's technical aspects, and yes, when you're learning musical theater, dance is not just dance, it's ballet and tap and jazz and modern and African and all of the things that can come up. Same thing vocally, you want to be able to sing jazz, but you also sometimes have to rap. So there's lots of technical things to know about. But when you're in the game, when you're on stage, you have to, I say, make sure your storytelling is king. Have your technique so locked down, practice clean, make sure that you know what you're doing, because you want to be safe, you want to be healthy and all of those things. But at the end of the day, it's all storytelling, whether you're just dancing or just speaking a monologue or singing and doing everything at once.
I mean, I think this is a pretty easy question for you to answer, because it's pretty obvious seeing you on stage and all these various interviews, and like, you are a very captivating person, very radiating, illuminating. So I guess this was, part of your system, of your character, of your persona, since the day you've been born. But nonetheless, you need this point in your life where you kind of say, you know what? I'm made for telling stories. Like, you play also the violin, which is storytelling just with another instrument. So where did this urge come from in the first place?
Funnily enough, I have to make sure everyone knows that I'm actually an introvert, and so this need to tell story, is really, it's true, 100% the truth. Like, and there's this misconception often that introverts don't like people, or they can't do anything that's public, or they don't have the energy. And even growing up, from relatives that didn't really understand, they would kind of try to make me change my personality, but that's not necessary, because I really have storytelling in my soul. It just means that after the show, I'm not going to be giving you that full stage energy. I'm going to meet you at the stage door and be really chill, because that's my real personality.
I totally get it.
But if you're an introvert out there, don't let that stand in the way of, your dreams or your desire to tell story on a stage or, in any format. I man, I always say that my story is about following the open doors. There have been so many ways that I've channeled my creativity. I was a composer when I was young. I used to write tons of poetry when I was small. And I went to college to study viola. You know, I was always telling story. And funnily enough, before I even started to sing, before theater was like consciously on my mind, my violin and viola professors used to always say, "You play like a singer. Do you sing?" And I'd be like, "No, I don't sing. That's weird. What does that even mean? You play viola like a singer." But I've always seen it. I could tell going forward and definitely looking back that I always wanted to exemplify the truth, share authenticity, and tell story. And it just so happens that it manifests in my life right now that it's in musical theater.
I think that's very powerful, and you're pointing something out that I always also discuss with my clients, that sometimes they think like an actor needs to be, you know, this outrageous, very, very active, very, very passionate person, or like somebody who sings has to be very outgoing. And, you know, if you're on stage, all that is true. But as a private person, you know, there is no need to be that way. So you can be an introvert. I'm pretty much the same. You know, when I'm on stage, when I'm performing, when I'm in front of the camera, I'm all there. I'm giving because I want to make sure that the best product comes out of me, and all together we do something great. But, you know, when I leave the set, when I, you know, get my makeup down, I'm just this regular guy who just wants to sit on the couch and just like, and people don't get it. Like, come on, if they meet me like in private, it's like, look, tell a joke, do something funny, you know, dance on this butt. Like, why? It's like, and this is so funny, like everybody has a story to tell. Everybody has something to share. Everybody has something powerful in his chest, in his core. So I think don't compare yourself. Just use your story and put it in the most powerful channel, and you will find your audience. Isn't that true?
I completely agree. You've got to filter all of these things through yourself. Because that's when it resonates with people. I did a social media coaching yesterday live, and I was really encouraging people to let other folks inspire you rather than trying to do what they did, because the reason it impacts you is because it's being filtered through their authentic self. That's why it works, you know. So if you try to like imitate them, it's not going to have the same impact. So let it inspire you that you can make your own rules, because that's what they have done and that's what's speaking to you.
I get this feeling that we are regulating, we are putting rules on everything, and creativity has also become some sort of standardized process sometimes in certain academies. Like, you need to have your objectives, you have your needs, you need to kind of reduce your aims as a character on a few topics, and then you can go for the scene. And we're trying to put creativity in those boxes, you know. I think creativity, like, you know, can sometimes be foolish and crazy and unpredictable and unexpected. And we're cutting down on so much beauty of our life that we can show just to have this standardized process of understanding if somebody is capable of performing or not, or is ready for the big show or not. And also to encourage the people out there, I think this is a great interview, like to tell them, believe in your product, even if nobody does. If you feel that you have something or the urge or there is a talent, you know, just work on that and believe that you will find your audience. You will find actually your niche, because this world has become a huge niche.
I love to share that when I was in college and I was switching my major from viola performance to adding more theater, the first thing I had to do, I had to give up my scholarship, because to keep my scholarship, I had to play in several orchestras and take lots of lessons. And in order to study theater more, I couldn't do it. And so I had to relinquish my scholarship. And I will never forget, I went to the dean's office and I spoke with my curriculum counselor, and he said, "You will never be cast. Like, this is the stupidest thing you could ever do with your life, is throw everything away. You will never be cast." And I think back to that moment so often, because there are so many things you need to be excellent at this job. But one of the things we need is just, it's not a stubbornness, but it is that belief in yourself. And even it's not stubbornness in a negative way. It's just the willingness to believe in yourself, even if you're by yourself.
Absolutely. And I think in a moment, somebody tells you, you will never be cast. If you go down that road, you know that's the right road. And If somebody tells you, oh, you're not done, you're not the right person for this job, or you don't belong in here, probably you are. They're just afraid that you are flipping the status quo.
That's it.
They're just
You are reflecting
changing
to them their own fears.
because maybe they had the chance to do it. Maybe they were out on the limb and then they kind of retracted, right? They kind of retreated and they still have that remorse. So now they're projecting that remorse on other people. In the end, you have to leave that 25% of open space to the creators themselves and not try to regulate everything, because those 25%, that's where the magic comes from.
For sure. And that magic is what we want to see. And I, never downplaying the other 75%. It's fascinating. I love reading acting theory. I love seeing how people think, even though maybe I will never adopt it, or if I will take in like a sliver of it and try it out and say, meh, meh, but the magic, you have to be open to, because that is what creativity is to me. It's that being ready in the moment to be just completely honest, whether it is something that you studied in class or not. That is magic. That's me. That's what I want to watch. That's what I want to listen to and watch and see on stage.
I think a lot of people are also afraid of being vulnerable in that moment. Also maybe getting evaluated and judged by that. But once you get through that, you will be way stronger than before. So it's just a beautiful process. And the more often you do it, the less frightening it becomes.
For sure. I think that a lot of us are afraid of being wrong too. And I try to clear that up right away when I'm coaching. I was like, there's no being wrong here. We're going to try things and we're going to do them. And there's going to be some things that feel more aligned than others. That's awesome. But just throw away the idea of being wrong, because that's stifling. That really cuts off your creativity. And if we let, being right or wrong drive us, it's not even fun for us, the actor. It's not even fun.
Absolutely. Maybe because I'm from southern Italy, so I believe that romanticism has always to involve a song. I can't picture being romantic without singing, even though my singing is, let's just not talk about it. But when my heart opens up, I need melody to kind of translate what I got inside of myself. And that's why I really and truly mean that. I think like the standardized form that we're also teaching kind of reflects into movies, and movies have become a very practical way of making money through a standardized process that works. By all means, that's okay. But where's the romanticism? And I go to a musical, and that's one of those remaining islands where it is allowed to sing. It is allowed to be silly. It is allowed to be slightly imperfect, to follow everything, and of course telling this grand and huge story, but at the same time also to feel, very small with your little song and the spotlight on and everything is dark. That's so magical about musical, and people don't take it, I think, enough into account how difficult it is and how much it can actually transform and how much it can empower people.
It really, they tell you in school that you start to sing on a musical stage because words don't, speaking words doesn't suffice anymore. You have to break into that next level. And I love the idea. I think that's a really sweet way to think of it. It's not an easy discipline. You're asking a lot of your body. You're asking a lot of your attention. And in these really big musicals, it's a machine. How the sets work and how everything is very exact. Everything's very specific where you need to be. But I have learned to, and I love to teach people, that it's possible to have so much freedom within those parameters as well. It's a really demanding art form. It really is. But it's very rewarding as well.
I know it from a lot of friends that are doing musicals, but I admired the fact that they're sweating. They're losing a lot of weight during one show, and you guys are playing 8 shows a week. I mean, it's just it's just unimaginable. I would go to some theater, like stage actors classic. They play 8 times a week. Come on, shall we? Is like, what? No, my art suffers. No, that's not possible. Is it? Because I think I heard an interview, or I just read an interview where you said you've been first impacted by the Hunchback of Notre Dame and this very dark romantic way of getting robbed and plunging into a new world and discovering this this passion of being otherworldly in love with something that others wouldn't even regard. It was that kind of one of the keys to say, I want to be part of this world.
When I look back, yes.
Hmm.
I could see it share, but in the moment I didn't notice it. In the moment I was just drawn in by the story, and I was like, I just need to be involved in this world somehow. And so I used to play in the orchestra pit for a lot of musicals.
Hmm.
And you know, it wasn't really in my consciousness that I really just wanted to be on stage. At the time, I just recognized I want to be part of this. And so anytime there was, you know, a way to be in the opera orchestra or in the musical theater orchestra, I was there. For example, Fiddler on the Roof is a very famous musical. It's Anatevka in Germany. And there is a character, obviously, you know, that plays the fiddle. And so anytime that show was happening, I wanted to make sure I was playing fiddle, whether it's, you know, down in the pit or not. But I really feel like my break in was through really beautiful musical scores. And Hunchback of Notre Dame is one of those that it just grabbed me by the heart. Since I was a little kid. It's just fantastic music. And it tells story. Even at the beginning of the show is in Latin. I don't understand Latin, you know, but you still are like grabbed by the chest and you're part of the story right away.
Because you get that holy introduction, that Latin, you know, that ancient language of the, you know, of these old rituals, that worshiping inside of Notre Dame, that, you know, it elevates it to an incredible degree. So Esmeralda, I think, you know, Esmeralda, she's an incredible woman, right?
Yes, she really is. I tell you, gosh, it's hard to pick a favorite character. You know, the plight of Quasimodo himself is also, once again, underdog, you know, is very, very beautiful. And I think that in the Disney retelling, I do appreciate that they didn't wrap it up with a bow, like at the end he gets the princess and everybody lives happily ever after, because it is still very far from the original Hugo, but it's important to tell that story. It's important to tell the story that has anguish and it has, you know, realness, and that sometimes you do the right thing and the right thing is a hard thing, and the end. You know, sometimes it goes like that.
Absolutely. Isn't that also, like, in a way, a great analogy for the acting endeavor, for the entertainment industry endeavor, to get robbed by a stronger force, to indulge yourself totally and get soaked in, and then, you know, ultimately you're trying to kind of recompose yourself in the process and finding out, where am I actually standing in this? You know, what can I actually ask from this world, right?
Yeah, it's the human experience, which is sometimes more pleasant than others, but I think it's important to show it, both sides, all sides.
The most fascinating part about your story is that you were sitting in the orchestra pit. So you were creating the music first. So you had it already in your system. And then probably the critical mass was so accumulated, you had so much of it to say, okay, now I can burst it out. Now I can sing it, actually. Now I got it internalized. Now I want to put it out. I want to project it.
That's basically what happened, and it's always so easy to see in retrospect, but that's exactly what happened. I thought I was, you know, content to play this gorgeous music from, you know, in the pit, but one day I had to climb out of the pit. One day I had to sing too.
That's very mythological also in a way. It's like very ancient Greek tragedy stories, climbing out of the pit and falling out, right, and claiming the spot. You are changing also the narrative. You're playing roles that, you know, were written for, let's say the way it is, like for white women, right? For those white leading ladies, and all of a sudden you're coming over, like, with all your languages, all your talents, and say, you know what, I'm a human being like everybody else. So what's the point of, you know, not being able of playing something just because it was written in one way? It doesn't mean that we can, you know, flip and change the narrative and make it even broader and even more appealing for even more people. Was that initially? Now everything seems so fine, like you're saying in a retrospective. Was it initially tough to get into those cracks?
Yes and no. Half of it is mindset. Half of it is believing that you can. And I always say right off the bat that I don't think that type is a bad thing. I don't think that type is racist or something like this. If something's written where the author has in mind, this is for, you know, a 16-year-old blonde woman, super, you know, but if someone wants to think outside the box and they're interested in me, I want to sing for it too. Why not? You know? So one of the first big examples of that on my journey was in Sweeney Todd. And that role really is for a 16-year-old blonde. And it's in the songs. her love interest sings about her golden hair.
Right.
And, you know, it's for soprano, and it's for, you know, a lyrical soprano, not like a belting soprano. And that has always been on my heart, because even though I play all of these divas and I play all of these, like, you know, kind of Whitney Houston or like these Sister Act, these kinds of roles, I also am a classical soprano. And so I want to have those opportunities too. And somebody reached out to me. I'll never forget, the director of Sweeney Todd reached out to me and asked me if I wanted to sing Joanna, if I wanted to play Joanna. And I fell on the floor, because in that moment I realized that I could open my mind even more. Like, I always thought, yeah, I really want these opportunities, but I think in my mind, I wasn't sure that people would see me that way. And in that moment where he was farther than I was like, all right, Sid, get your mindset together, because, you know, the possibilities are endless. And so several roles have come since then that are traditionally cast white, that, you know, some of them are pop, some of them are classical. But I'm super thankful to have on my resume just kind of a mixture of all of the things that I love to do and all of the things I do well.
And it doesn't strike me as you're like you're saying, oh, now I claimed the spot even for something that was, you know, written for the white. No, it's just expanding the horizon and exploring new life and getting in something in touch that you even haven't thought of in the first place. And I think this is so telling. I
Exactly.
see quite a lot. We're also with some colleagues. No, this monologue isn't for me. No, this doesn't really work on me. No, I know this. I'm not good with that. It's like, how do you know? Just try it. Just plunge into it. Maybe you discover something even more precious, you know, through this monologue that you find, you know, not compelling for yourself than with the other 40 monologues that you did in the past, or the other 40 that you did in the past that were perfectly fine for you. Because you know, sometimes as an actor, when I realize this is so close to me, I'm not good at it. I need to challenge. If things are too close to me, sometimes I feel like this is not really, you know, this is not really forcing something out of my system. I need stuff that is a bit more, you know, difficult to achieve. So now I can put it into work, and now for me it becomes something way more expandable instead of, you know, narrowing down. Okay, this I can apply, you know, immediately for myself.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think variety is healthy for us, and I am ever grateful for these divas. These divas have been paying my bills for years, you know, playing these kinds of roles. But I tell you, being able to expand, and, you know, the joy it is that you're not the only person who sees yourself that way, that is really a big blessing in my life.
What was your favorite diva so far?
I love Sister Act. Sister Act is a show that I played in 3 different countries, and so I've gotten to, like, grow with the role over time. Last time I played it, I did it in Switzerland, and there is just a sense of not having anything at all to prove that came with it the last time, and it was so freeing. And I tell you, playing these comedic roles, once again, going back to the fact that I grew up very shy, and that I'm not shy anymore, but I'm still an introvert, because woohoo, I'm proud of my personality type. But you know, playing a comedic role like this, it feels like 3 hours of stand-up comedy in German. Don't forget, it's not my first language. I felt I got to the point where I just didn't feel judged, and I got out there, and it was the funniest version of Sister Act I ever put out.
Because you guys, musical artists, they travel from country to country. They, you know, they have the same show over and over. Sometimes you guys change the roles. Sometimes you keep the role, but it's in different countries. So it's always a new version. It's always a new way of interpreting it, and that's what's so challenging about it. Like theaters, they do the plays whether they're on tour, but it's, you know, always the same region, it's always the same country, all the same in the same city. But really, musical artists, that, you know, that drive all over the world, and like interpreting those roles, and I have many different audiences. What has been your your funniest, like, most responsive audience so far, and probably the I don't know, let's not talk about the one that
No, I'm laughing because I think audiences are so different around the world. Like, you'll have people in America where it almost feels like they think it's a conversation. Like, they'll talk about, yes, girl, this kind of thing.
I see.
And then you land in Vienna and it's very, very, like, poised and proper,
Yes.
and people want to be very polite. They're
Agree.
enjoying the show, but in a
Yes.
different way. You
Yes.
know,
Different.
I think that one of the craziest experiences I had was playing cabaret in Germany. I was playing it in Trier, which is on the border of Luxembourg and close to France. And I, you know, if you know the subject matter of the show, we're talking pre-World War II, we're talking uncomfortable subject matter. You know, it's uncomfortable in America, but it's very uncomfortable in Germany for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Important but uncomfortable. And so we were playing cabaret in an actual cabaret. It was a very small club. And so I was interacting with people so closely and this subject that is so, you know, so nervy. And that was wild, even for me. I was like, all right, I'm brave enough to do this. Whew, let's go. That was really, really crazy.
I think this could be useful for all the newbies out there starting. Like, they have the desire to be on stage, and like when they see themselves in movies sometimes, they see themselves on stage sometimes. I rarely hear somebody saying, you know what, I want to do musicals. Like for me, definitely the advantage of being like a very fit musical you know, performer is that you, like you said, you get a variety of talents and disciplines into your luggage that you can use on so many different levels later on. Of course, there are some great musical schools, but what would you recommend if somebody feels like, okay, this could be my thing? How would you start to find out? Is it like just singing songs in the beginning, or would you dive into an academy right away? What would be your suggestion for people like tinkering about this?
Well, I think that it's important to talk about my philosophy on education. I think it's really, really extremely valuable to go to school. It's extremely valuable to get a degree, but know that you're always educating yourself. So when I say get education, I don't mean you have to, you know, start researching, auditioning for schools or an Aufnahmeprüfung. I mean, start to surround yourself with people who do the craft really, really well. You don't have to move to do this, because we live in a really great age where there are podcasts like this one, there are books, there are shows. Like, you can be inspired by excellent people all the time. And when I say excellent, I mean people who not only are have a brilliant technique, but also have just a very clear, clean access to their spontaneity and their creativity and their honesty, like the things that we've been talking about today. So I would say that your education starts now. Even if you're like, oh no, Corona, I can't go to school. Or there's so many people out there that write me that say, I was in the process of auditioning for musical schools and then Corona shut everything down. That doesn't mean that your education is on hold. You're always able to start learning. It's definitely of high value to start to dance ASAP, because one of the many challenges is simply anaerobic, simply being able to sing a song while dancing. You'll catch me on the treadmill singing, because depending on the role, I'm like, I have a very good idea I'm going to be running up the stairs while singing this high note, so you better believe I'm starting to train my body to do these impossible things. So I would say really expand your idea of education and start to surround yourself. They say that you're the sum of the 5 people you surround yourself with most. And whether this is true or not, they're going to inspire you and they're going to influence who you become as a performer. So start to educate yourself.
I truly believe that, and I think that's very powerful. If you surround yourself with those 5 people you get the most inspired from, you know, you will try to level up to them. You will try to catch up, so that will make you better. You will improve to them. If your surroundings, if your environment is of very low interest to your perception of being a creative mind, you won't be really inspired to put in any work, because you know there is no example that leads out there. Where are your leaders, your examples? Like, where was there anyone like you said, oh my God, I have to sing like her or dance like him?
For sure. One of my favorite singer actresses out there is Audra McDonald. She has inspired me from the very beginning. She's somebody who has an opera background and then moved to musical theater. And so maybe that's something that spoke to me too, because I came from outside of the world into it. And I even find that on days where I'm like a little bit tired or my voice is not doing the thing, I actually turn on her singing and I sing with her. And it's very funny how voices understand each other. And she's not only inspired me when I was brand new, but she's inspiring me even now today. And I wanted to add something really important about who you surround yourself with, because we're always consuming. We're always consuming media or, you know, or our environment. And so if you are surrounding yourself with the great people, also know how to edit your environment. If you are taking in too much of someone who doesn't believe in you, or someone that for whatever reason triggers you when you look at their stuff online, cut that cord. Like, you're not doing anything bad by unfollowing. It's like, you know, it's like continuing to eat something that makes you feel sick. Why would you consume that? So really up-level your environment by adding the people that you want to be like and cutting the people that make you feel badly.
Use what's useful and discard what's useless.
That's right.
And there are so many energy drainers out there. And I think a lot of people don't, you know, they're not even aware of the fact how many energetic vampires wait for you, right? In the niches of society, in the cracks, like sometimes friends, sometimes your environment, sometimes your colleagues. Everybody wants to get your sunlight. Everybody wants to get some of your spark. Everybody wants to kind of incorporate it in this system. And they could just say, I want your trick. I want your magic. Please teach me. Please educate me. What they say and said, oh, you were so great. And you were just like, and give me that smile. And this way of dealing with your own truths, of not being honest to yourself because you're admiring somebody else or because you want to know how he did it or she did it, that leads to this vampirism. Sometimes it's subconscious, sometimes it's conscious. But like you said, you have to be aware of the fact to really boost you. And I'm not saying that you should be like the selfish, creative, like autistic mind that just runs through the world and just grabs people that help him along the way. No. But what is the sense of giving out something that doesn't come back, not even close as you gave it out, that will always be distorted? With that information, you can't build upon that. And like in 30 years, you want to have your career, you want to have your place in this world, and you can't have that if you're always giving out something that will never come back in
I
this.
completely agree. I see it exactly that way, because, you know, art comes from the artist. And so if you destroy yourself in the process, what is it all for? You know, if you're committed to your art, you need to also be committed to yourself and your self-care. And it's not selfish to take care of yourself.
No.
Actually, it's more of a service to the world to make sure that you're good. Because how are you going to give from an empty cup? How are you going to do that? I try to monitor if I feel drained every time I'm around a certain person. And I am not telling you to cut off all your friends and family. That's not what I mean. But keep in mind, just keep tabs on how you feel when you leave the presence of a certain person. And then, you know, if you find that it's a person that maybe needs to exit from your following list or exit from your life, no problem. But on the other hand, you can always just reduce the time. You know, I'm not saying you have to cut off everybody you ever knew, but do think about yourself, because self-care is not selfish.
I totally agree. And plus you have responsibility towards your craft. You want to build something with your craft. Yeah. You have those bricks that you have to lay one brick after the other. They have to fit perfectly. Nobody will come at you like after 20 years and you screwed up your career and say, oh yeah, you poor little girl. Oh yeah, I know you gave so much out to the wrong people. I can understand. Now I will give you your shot. Nobody's going to do that. They will come to you because you built that perfect wall, because you laid one brick after the other in a perfect manner. And you can only do that by having the best ingredients. If somebody's stopping you from investing in your craft because that's your mission, let's face it, it's because they don't understand, they don't share, and they don't want to do them by themselves. So they kind of, you know, there is this saying, and I think this is super powerful, like there are two ways of building the tallest building in town. So A, build the tallest building. B, you build a medium-sized building and you tear down, you invest all your energy in tearing down all the other buildings around you. Now you have the tallest building. So there are two ways of doing that. I'm always going with just build the tallest building.
Yeah. For sure. I know that some people can get, me included, can get caught up in, yes, well, I want to be like loving and kind to everybody, but you're part of everybody. You're one of them too. So be loving and kind to yourself as well. And there are people out there who will understand if you have to say no. And the ones who don't understand, that's their responsibility. You know, if you have to say no or withdraw, you know, how someone reacts to that is completely their responsibility.
Absolutely. you seem to have such a luggage of maturity, and that comes, of course, you know, with your practice, with the training, through music. But when I hear your content and I dove into your resources, that always kind of struck me like, oh, that's interesting. She's so anchored in her beliefs. At the same time, she's loose and flexible. So she has that internal maturity, but still the eyes on the outer world. They want to explore and play and be childlike. And I think that's a perfect combination. So it seems to me like that you are pretty much balanced out, but I think that was hard to achieve. Or was that all natural for you?
Well, first of all, thank you so much. That's really kind. I think that what I have worked on and I continue to work on is both mindset and play. Mm-hmm. I really, really want to have a mindset that is purposeful, and I take responsibility for the things that show up in my life. You know, not that I'm blaming myself or I'm down on myself, but I always take a look and see, okay, have I believed something that has caused this to happen? Or, you know, if not, no problem. But I try to make sure that the mindset that I'm operating in is the most optimal. And then at the same time, I'm an artist, I'm a creative. And so I want to play, like I want to show up with 50% of a plan and see what happens, you know, with the other 50%. I don't mind being prepared and throwing it away. It's almost like how you would go to an audition. You know, I can definitely speak for musical theater auditions. You sometimes have 9-10 songs to prepare. I had that recently. I had to fly to London and I had 10 songs to prepare, 3 scenes. And I showed up there knowing that it's very possible that they only want to hear one and that they'll want me to play it as if I was an elephant on the Serengeti. Like, you know, they would want me to do something completely different. So I really am prepared with my plan, but I'm super loose with it at the same time. You know what I mean? Like, it's like holding on loosely. And
at a certain point, being this artist and being creative, I don't know where you found the time to do that. You started also teaching other people. Like, you know, when you've reached your critical mass, I guess, like you said, okay, now I'm good. I can perform with this. Now it's time also to give something back to the community. How did this shift happen?
It was really important to me because I was seeing my colleagues, for the sake of trying to be professional, not being honest with themselves. Like, people weren't talking about their losses. They weren't talking about failure. They weren't talking about how heartbroken you can be when something you really want to happen doesn't happen. And it happens to all of us. And I thought we need to be honest with each other, and we need to not only like be tough and take it, but we need to look at our wounds. We need to look at our mindset and work on it, because we all, you know, we have these beautiful, wonderful educations, but there was no time to teach you how to take care of yourself. That's what I noticed. I feel like that's the biggest flaw in the education system. Like, they turn out these brilliant performers that will crumble in the first 6 months, whether it's success or failure, because both of them are heavy.
And they can file their taxes too. So they're great performers, and they don't know how to survive with their performance. It's like, oh, thanks, guys. Thanks for building this up for me.
Yeah, somebody has to teach you. Somebody has to teach you how to teach yourself, you know, because I mean, I don't want to create a legion of people who are dependent on me. I want to show people how to hack themselves and figure out how to take great care of themselves and be the healthiest artist so they can create great art.
Was there any book or any experience, any like epiphany that kind of happened to you where you thought, okay, this is great. I'm going to start to share this. I'm going to start empowering my community.
It happened really organically. I started to talk on the internet. I just started to go live. Yeah, it began very, very organically, and then I organized it so that it wasn't draining for me, you know, because I love to give and I love to share and I love to serve, but I also have to protect my energy. And so when I realized that this is something that's very valuable to people, I continue to put my free content out there all the time. But as far as like having access and having one-on-one coaching and this kind of thing, I thought, okay, I've got to organize this into courses or organize this into, like, you know, a coaching package. And so that's where the business came out of it, because it really was something that spoke to my heart, that was important to me in my own journey. And I realized that it was really resonating with people because we didn't learn this. because we did not learn how to take care. So I put my whole toolbox together and I offered it to people that way.
What is your first lever? Where do you usually start?
I usually talk about stage fright first, because I think that stage fright is not something that only occurs in performance. It's just anything that stands in the way of you doing your best work and you being honest. I know a lot of people who want to, for example, start a podcast or speak their truth online, or go to an audition or sing a new technique. You know, they find I can do this in the shower, but for some reason, you know, when someone's standing there with a pen, I can't get it out of my throat. So I love to start with attacking the fears, you know, because it's always going to be there in some form or another. It might be smaller, it might come up as a sneak attack, but once you know how to handle it, you are king, like, or queen, as it may be. So I love sharing about stage fright. I also have a course coming up about body image, because that's one of the things that it's not just for women. It's one of the things that can stand in our way, and it doesn't have to. And then as far as the coaching that I do one-on-one, I love talking to people about career path, because I do have a very unconventional path, and I feel like if I can listen to you, share with you, lend you some of my confidence, and really offer just like accompaniment along the way, it can be really, really valuable in getting you where you want to go.
And this is kind of unique. Now coaching in the last couple of years is becoming big, and people seem to understand that they need some sort of medium. They need some sort of translator what the system wants. And the coach right now is spreading all over the globe. But before that, I felt like a lot of people were jealous about their discoveries, about their tools. They were very, you know, they envied them a lot. So they want to keep them for themselves. But I always say this: if you share your tools, if you reflect on them and you project them on other people and you see if they work or not and refurbish your own, they will get better. Your tools, if you keep them for themselves, they will die very lonely in a very desperate and dark place. If you make them available for everybody else and they will give you that feedback that they work, it's still your tool. It's still your secret. It's still your key. Nobody will take it away. It will just become better and better and bigger and bigger.
I feel like holding on and keeping things secret kind of is an indication that you're not believing in yourself, because no one's going to be you, you know, even if they use the same tools, if they try to follow, like, no one's going to be you anyway. So continue to do the thing and do it really, really well. There's no need to hide. There's no need to be secretive about it, because at the end of the day, believe in you and in the path you're on.
And create a community out there. Fear is nothing else than false evidence appearing real. It's just not real. It's just an illusion, right? You can, I mean, you are the best example. I mean, you can do literally everything you want, right? There are no constraints. It's just your creativity.
It's your mindset. It really is your mindset. A lot of the limitations that we have, we only perceive.
And you have to go through trial and error. So what? Yeah, sometimes, you fall on your butt and you stand up and you look better than before and you've learned a very valuable lesson. And sometimes you earn the respect that you need. But like staying in that gray zone and that average zone for me is the worst thing. That is hell on earth. Like having no response at all because you're afraid of going out, of taking that leap and always stay in that very comfortable zone. I think that's hell on earth. At least do a mistake and get a response, and now you know what you can improve. And if it works even better, then you know what works and you can take it from there.
That's the way forward. Exactly. That's the way forward. And it's something to be ashamed about. My goodness, the people that you really admire out there, do you know how many times they failed? Do you know how many times they tried something and it publicly didn't work, or they made a proclamation that they were going to do something and it didn't happen? And these are the people you look up to. So, you know, you have to be willing to take that risk too. Failing forward is not a myth. Every time you take a risk and do the thing, you're going forward.
Lean into, dip into the problem, dip into the mistake, and you going forward with it. Only if you stay static because you're afraid or because you froze, then of course it becomes a problem because there is no evolution, no progress.
Exactly. This is the way. You know, failing is actually the way. It sounds so scary, but the more you miss the mark, the easier it becomes to just get up and try again.
And now it sounds so easy, and we're all smiling and we're all generous about this information, but it's really true. A creative community out there, if you're listening to this right now, there is no master that has been, you know, that has fallen from the sky and all of a sudden he appears to be perfect and immaculate. Everybody has, you know, gone through some sort of process. To some, maybe some aspects of our talent are easier to grasp, and to some they are harder, but you know, it's always a process, and it will always to some extent be difficult. But then again, it's about enjoying exactly that.
For sure. I don't want to romanticize it, because I definitely have fallen and I've definitely felt disappointed. I definitely have cried, you know, out there. Don't feel like you're a loser if things hurt your feelings. Things hurt my feelings for sure. You know, there are jobs out there that you go for, and if you don't get it, it's okay. And there's some that man, you need a couple days to get over it. Or even like, you know, a couple months later, you're like, dang, you know, it happens. It really, really does. But it's part of the process, and you are still moving forward.
Have you had that experience, like where you said, this role was meant for me? I don't understand why I didn't get this role. I was perfect for it.
For sure. It has happened to me more than once. And I had one, I told this story recently on a podcast, that my grandmother actually passed away while I was in the rounds for a certain role, and her funeral was the day of the callback, and I talked with my family, and they asked me to stay in Germany and take the callback. And friends, I did the callback and I did not get the job. And that hurt. That really, really hurt. I was like, man, you know, I wouldn't say that I have regrets, because I cleared it up with everybody and they felt like that was what I should do, what she would have wanted me to do. And I gave my all, like I was present on the day, but sometimes it just, the chips don't fall the way you want them to. And I have seen so many, like, I've seen so much redemption. Later on, I got the role, you know, in another production, and I played it often, and it's one of the things that's all over my resume now. But in that moment, I thought, oh my gosh, what have I done? Right. And I cried tears, guys. I cried for sure. But it is part of the process, and it is something that I can use to encourage you right now, that it will hurt sometime, but we are so brave. Artists, we are so brave. Like, we have the idea that we can imagine for a living. You know, that we can take situations that don't exist.
Right.
Yeah, and make you believe that it happens, and you know, make a career of it. We are some brave people. Oh, yeah. And so don't be afraid. You know, don't be afraid. Keep moving forward.
Plus,
and
I'm sorry for interrupting, but I feel like right now, looking back at also like at my career, it's like you always get the roles you are meant to get. You always get the parts that you should get. If you don't get that part, there is a deeper reason that you can't really see right now. Don't worry. Don't be so self-entitled and saying, this was meant for me. I was perfect. Like, yeah, maybe not. Maybe there was like, you know, you never know what happens to a production. Maybe they shut down. Maybe the director is a prick. Maybe it's a hell with your colleagues. You always get the parts. The universe provides for you.
Yeah, you have to trust. You know, there's a lot of times where I think that I know, and I look back, and there's so many times. All of you who are been in the field for a little while know that sometimes you're disappointed with not getting something, and later you're like, oh, thank God.
Yeah.
Thank God that's gonna work.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly.
What is the part that you want to play? What is the role what is your next role? What is the thing you say, I want to do this?
Let's see. There are some dream roles out there. Goodness, I love Wicked. Wicked is that's coming back to Germany. I didn't audition this go around, but I feel like it's a show that will run forever and ever. So one of these days I'm going to be in Wicked. I love Hamilton. It's a fantastic show. Yeah, and I would love to. Aida is one of my favorite roles. I have played it before, but I'd love to play it again. Yeah, and there is a role that I booked it right before Corona. It's a show called Memphis, the musical, and it's so near and dear to my heart. And so they have pushed back the tour, and I'm still going to be a part of it whenever it does happen. So that's my next planned role is Felicia Farrell in Memphis, the musical.
Nice. Ever been to Memphis, Tennessee, to Graceland?
No, I actually haven't. I actually never.
Crazy.
In my dreams, every time before a role, I will, go on vacation and travel to, where it's based. I think that's kind of a great way to prep for a role. So maybe, who knows, when flying opens up again, maybe I can get to Memphis before I play the show.
Did you hear her? Like, this would be a great idea. Let's do this. Let's make this happen. Of course, we encounter a lot of creative people. A lot of creative people are, creative people are stubborn. Everybody has his interpretation about art, about performance, how it has to look. And it's really hard to get everything in your system, listening to their directions and at the same time being totally spontaneous and loose and playing as if it is the first time on stage. How do you put everything together? How do you respect the directions of the director and the very complicated choreography and hitting all their tones and being very exact and clear, and at the same time bringing in that immaculate spontaneous interpretation that happens in the moment? How do you meld all those things? Like, do you have?
I give myself time. I am not putting myself under any kind of pressure to get it all right at the same time, because people can get very overwhelmed in rehearsals and be under the impression that they have to hit it all at once. Nobody's expecting that of you. They want to see that you are working to put it together. It's a process, and that's allowed. Once again, this whole idea of being perfect or getting things right or wrong, throw that out the window. Know that it's a process. Sometimes the choreography is really going to work, and the tricks, sometimes there's like pyro and like flying. There's definitely shows where you're suspended in air and you cannot expect to get it all at the same time. And on the other hand, my background as a string player, like I grew up spending 6 hours in a practice room by myself. So I will practice 4 beats for an hour and I don't mind, So if it's about like a moment where I think, okay, this part of this passage of the song is difficult, and at the same time I'm, for example, running up the stairs, and I need to make sure that I'm conveying a certain, I will just practice it. I will just practice it so that when I am in the moment, it's in my body and my brain is on storytelling. And that's the other thing, not forgetting that I'm also thinking, I'm also practicing phonetics and things like that because, I'm working in a foreign language for me. I just prep myself, have a really clean technical preparation so that when I'm in the moment, I'm really focused on story. I'm focused on my partner. I'm focused in the moment and not in 3 bars where I have to flip over, I'm right here with you.
So since you are playing you're not playing in your mother language right now. You're playing like in German, let's say, right? You're, of course, exercising with phonetics, but to my visceral guts experience, that word in my mother language means something else. It evokes something else than in the target language now that I have to perform. Where do you find the congruency? How do you connect those emotional fields and still have like this liberate performance and delivery?
There's something that was really important to me. As soon as I landed in this country, I wanted to not just know the language, but know the language. Like, I didn't want to be in my head. I did not want it to be, slightly, in my jaw. I wanted it to be in my gut. And so I started speaking all German all the time, even when it was terrible, because I wanted it to be part of how I actually authentically express myself. And, when you listen back to this podcast, you'll hear me sometimes accidentally start to speak in German because I have swallowed it into my gut. It is part of how I communicate. Now, there are still words or phrases that for me, even if I'm speaking German, I almost always say thank you in English. And I almost always say I love you in English, because those are just some things that, God, it has such a heart connection that Danke doesn't begin to go where thank you does to me, because it's my mother tongue, right? Sure. But for me, I think that it is important to, if you're an artist who works in multiple languages, bring that foreign language into your offstage life. start to talk a little bit about art and politics and war and things that are important in that language, even if it's hard, because it's what's gonna help meld it and make it more of an authentic feeling to you, so that when you're on a stage, you're not feeling like you're filtering through a foreign language.
Yes.
You're filtering through a language that's also a heart language for you.
I totally agree. It has to, you have to drill to your emotional core and connect that language to your emotional core. And I always make this example with the kids. A kid, before it speaks, it sings. A kid, before it writes, it paints. A kid, before it walks, it dances. So just behave like a kid in this new language and absorb it through this very natural process. Just sing it, just dance it, just paint it. Just make it your emotional core. If you try to rationalize it, things will be always on the surface. You won't have that connection. The tones will always be shallow and flat. The interpretation will just go to a certain extent, but it won't hit those nerves. But if you approach it through this way, like very similar to what you're describing, I think you get an immediate connection to it. You will create that tunnel, like that direct connection to your emotional core, to what you really
I love that example.
It's
great. Like kids, I remember when I moved to Hamburg from Florida.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
What? Yeah, sunshine stay to rainy days all through the year. Thank you.
I was very cold. That's what we can say for sure.
I can imagine.
But I remember friends that I had met, they had just had a baby when I moved there. And I decided that I was going to keep up with Lily. Like linguistically, I was like, I'm going to learn with Lily because she's just like me. She knows exactly as many words in German as I do. Okay, so let me keep on pace with her. And I used to, you know, not in a super serious way. I didn't like have competitions with the infant, but just the very idea to learn it like her. Why not? You know, I didn't go to German class. I sat and listened to people. I, you know, in the cafeteria when my colleagues, I went to a school, not for German, but I went to a musical theater conservatory in Hamburg. And, you know, when my colleagues would be sitting over lunch and gossiping and screaming and doing their things, I was just like, I was taking it all in. It's like, aha, because at the end of the day, I want to speak this like a vernacular. Like, I really want to speak this like the people do, you know? Right. Yeah, for sure. I want a clean stage German, but I also want to just like chill.
Yeah.
I also want to be able to just chill and talk to people about what's going on in their hearts.
That's genius. Is this something we have probably lost over time, like to really observe, to really listen, because we're so fast with our language. We immediately have judgments, and we you know, with so much offer to look at, so many distractions. Is there something that maybe we can relearn, like really observe and just shut up for a couple of minutes and just listen to other people?
It really is not a bad idea to just observe. And now I did have the added, you know, impetus that I couldn't really keep up linguistically yet. Like I couldn't join the conversation even if I wanted to, but rather than zoning out or doing my own thing or getting on my phone, I just decided to listen. If I was in the train and people were talking, I was listening and starting to feel how people speak the language and how, you know, how it sounds different from my teacher, and you know, how people interact. And also I thought it was really interesting when people would speak to me in English, which I tried not to let them do. I was very, very adamant about just please let me struggle this out, you know. But if they spoke to me in English, the small mistakes they would make would give me a clue as to how the German language works. I was like, they said it the other way because in German, you would use that word at the end of the sentence, and I would understand. For example, I have a friend who I will never forget. He said, I said thank you to him, and he said please, and I was like, why? So because bitte is also you're welcome, please, and you're welcome in the same word. And so these kinds of things is like, this will give me a clue into this language that I want to learn.
How was it to move from Florida to Germany to Hamburg, which is, I think, like the opposite? It's just
it was humbling because, like I said, I went to a conservatory. I was coming from a graduate school where I was teaching certain classes to taking certain classes where I couldn't understand the language. And it was really like, you know, you get to a point where I felt like a professional before, and now I can't read.
Yeah.
You know, like I literally cannot read what's in front of me. It was humbling. It was an adventure. I stretched so much. I felt incredibly blessed because I think it was my big break. My first big break was coming to Germany. You know, this is where I really got my career going. Yeah, I learned a ton. Not just German that first year. And I got to meet so many people from so many places. Like, America is such a big country.
Yeah.
And we're all, you know, whether we believe it or not, we're all immigrants there.
Yes.
Just about all of us.
Yes.
Except for the natives.
Except for the natives, right.
Except for the Native Americans, we're all immigrants there. But I felt like being on a continent where the countries are so much closer together was so wild, because in my class I had a Finn Swede in the class, I had a Brazilian girl in my class, I had a guy who was Austrian in my class, and then from all the different regions of Germany where they all speak so differently too. You know, like,
yes.
you know,
it
really, there's a big from like Bayern to, like, it really is, it was really a mixture of cultures, and it was really cool to be part of.
And I think that's definitely something that builds like a superstructure in your brain. When you get out of your comfort zone, out of your country, and you have to face a totally different life. And like you said, you felt like an experienced actor in your country, and now all of a sudden, like, how do I read this? Like, how can I put this into action? I feel like this is so
I won't forget. I remember standing outside of my ballet class and begging, like, well, not begging, but asking people really quickly to tell me the names of my body parts so I knew what the ballet teacher was saying. I was like, okay, Hand, Elbow, Fuß, Nacken, alles klar, gut, let's do this.
Okay, not the full instruction. It's the same thing too. If I'm somewhere in Asia, I go to a yoga class, it's like, how do you spell this? So I know exactly what kind of posture I need to do, because otherwise it just looks silly, because I'm totally out of the choreography. I'm sorry, this means something else. It is huge. I mean, I've went through a similar kind of challenge. I went back to Italy for a couple of years because I felt like it was time for me to also perform in my home country, where I've never performed, because I grew up between the United States and Germany. I've never actually lived and performed in Italy, and it was like an immense challenge. Also learning Italian, like phonetically, that I could appear on stage and go to castings and all. Yeah, I was revisiting my whole craft. I was kind of like a sock. I was kind of putting everything from the inside out, and vice versa, to really kind of, you know, sustain that. And it really built my character. It was a tough challenge, but ultimately I think when we are giving ourselves the chances to face these fears and these challenges, we can only grow through the process. And even if it's realize, okay, this is definitely something that I don't want, even that is great, because now you got control. Now you figured out something that you definitely don't want to do, which is also good. So this is great.
Very
also,
important.
Yeah, very important too. Like, is there anything you wouldn't do anymore, like that you are not let's say not proud of, but where you say, okay, this I don't need anymore in my life, my artistic behavior?
I would say that once I learned how to say no, that my life changed forever. You don't have to take everything that's offered to you. Like, you're not, even though people try to feed you this starving artist mentality, you don't have to take it. You're not desperate, you know? And so when I learned the kinds of things that I'm interested in, or the environments that I want to work in, I felt not like a diva to say no, but like a responsible artist. That I know that I can say no, and it will be okay. You know, we have all had those moments where we think, okay, you know, I hope this works out for me, you know, relationally or financially or whatever, but it does work out. And I really stand by not only the things I've taken on, I stand by my no's. And I love that I have really developed that in myself. To say no sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not the end of the world to say no, even to a great producer, to a great director. If he wants something shady, or if he wants something weird, or something that absolutely doesn't fit with your moral compass, with your ethical spinal cord, by all means, don't do it. Don't do it.
Say no. You can. And you can do it respectfully. You know, there's a lot of people out there that might seem intimidating, but you probably get more respect from them than you realize when you say no.
When you say no. Tell me, like, when you get a monologue, right? You get your line. Do you have like a to-go approach how to tackle that monologue, or is it always different? Do you always approach it immediately with singing, or what do you try to spot first?
That's a great question. I not too long ago did a live where I learned a song in front of in front of the world.
Mm-hmm.
I love to see it as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
I think that one of the mistakes that younger performers can do is that they jump to the high part or the hard part right away.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, okay, I just wanna belt this A, you know, that kind of thing. Whereas I wanna know where is this going? What is the shape of this monologue or a song? Because songs to me are monologues. What is the shape of it? What is the story that we're telling? And so I would read it in that fashion first, to, you know, for it as a dramatic piece, not as a musical piece even yet.
Yeah.
That does come into play, but not right away. And I also take a moment to decide where in the story it is. You know, is it a standalone piece for the sake of an audition, or am I presenting this as part of a whole? That, you know, where is this character and what is the journey? Even if the whole play has a huge arc, what part of the arc am I on? Because there are many arcs in between. Yeah, and then I will break it down musically and start to look at the plan that way too. And I, funnily enough, find that in doing that kind of prep work, I never have to try to memorize, because by the time you're done deciding who you are, what you want, and you know, where it's going, yeah, you already know because your intentions lead the way. Yes. Yeah, I was telling somebody just the other day, one of my students, he was asking me how I memorize a show, and I told him that I memorize the moments in between.
Oh,
and
that's beautiful.
Yeah, if I feel if I feel nervous before a show, that I don't know the words, because this happens, that you have that stupid, fearful thought of, do I know my text? Of course I know my text, but I tell myself, what's the first line? You know, is the first line "Hello Philadelphia"? Because I know what I'm thinking after "Hello Philadelphia" that gets me to the next line, that gets me to the bow, you know? It's going to take me all the way for the next 3 hours. So basically, I'm starting to build those in-between spots. Yeah, and then next thing you know, you have a song that's ready to go. And of course, you go back and you practice the hard stuff, and you think, okay, I want to phrase this differently, or okay, the articulation there is a little bit tricky. Let me make sure I clean that up. Of course, all of that stuff does come into play, but story is king.
Story is always king. And Bach said something very similar. He said, I never memorize my melodies. I just memorize what happens in the spaces between one melody section and the other, because that space, that little breather usually is filled with an emotion, and the emotion anchors the memory of the notes that I had to play.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, Bach.
That's really, really good.
I just read a book about Bach improvising on 10 different pianos in front of the King of Prussia. And it was in Germany when his son was directing the orchestra, the national orchestra, and the forte piano, that's how they called it back then, the forte piano, not the piano forte, were just delivered to the king. So he received 10 new pianos, and he called Bach and said, can you improvise me something? And I said, yeah, I will improvise on all 10 of them simultaneously. And he went from one room to the other, and he started playing, and he continued in his mind the storytelling arc of each and every one of those improvisations. He finished all of them. He wrapped them all up, and they made all perfectly sense, and they were all different.
Wow.
Yeah,
the human potential is mind-blowing.
It's limitless.
And yes, he was a genius, and yes, he was brilliant. Yeah, but guys, you are too.
Yes, we all are. We all are.
Yeah.
We need to put in some work. We just need to believe that work will be fruitful. And a lot of people are waving you down. A lot of people are telling you they're standing by the side of the road and they are afraid of going down that path, that route. And they will tell you, no, you will never make it. Let's sit on the couch. Let's hang out. Let's get stoned the rest of the day. And that is okay for a Sunday or so. But if you really want to make it, you have to stick to your road, to your belief. You have to construct that road. You have to build that road, and that takes a lot of time and also a lot of courage. I get that. But you will find eventually, if you call out to the universe, if you put in the good work, you will find the right people leading you to the next roadblock, and so on and so forth. it will appear to us that they will be less than the people who are actually waving you down. But if you really are considerate about looking back to your past, you will realize, oh, I thought he was an asshole, but actually he gave me some brilliant piece of advice. Oh, I thought he was over severe with me, but he just wanted my best product. And you will realize that a lot of people that you deemed being negative or not on your side, they were on your side from the first day, but they knew they had to be that way. Otherwise, your best product wouldn't, have come out. Sometimes you need to push and drill a little bit more. And you need to realize that not all the masters will tell you right from the start, oh, you're great. This is so great to work with you. Sometimes they're just a little bit more skeptic. Sometimes they're boiling it a little bit down because they don't want you to be overwhelmed by your creativity. And I think a lot of artists burned out. I know a lot of people that I deem brilliant, and now they're working in insurance jobs because, they didn't believe in themselves, and their masters were too fast or too slow, right? Sometimes it's also about adjusting your pace. And I'm curious because since you are traveling all over the place and singing, and there's a lot of fatigue involved. How do you clean your filters? How do you get back to planet Earth? How do you kind of restabilize yourself and your compass?
I am a big proponent of rest. I'm an introvert, and in order to recharge, I need to spend time by myself, and I'm unapologetic about that. And an 8-show-a-week schedule, Monday is the day free. And you might find me on a Monday night supporting a friend watching their show, but most often I'm recharging, and I try to, I love when I incorporated this into my life, to get up in the morning, not just in time to get to my first appointment or to go to work or whatever, but I get up to do something for me, so say I'm not doing an 8-show-a-week schedule. Say I have rehearsal at 10 in the morning. And there was a time when I lived so close to the theater, I could wake up at 9 o'clock, get a shower, maybe work out, and eat breakfast and be on time. I stopped that. I started to get up a couple hours earlier than that so that I wasn't living for the job.
Yes.
So that I was getting up for me. And there's something, it's so funny, you are getting less sleep, but there's something more restful about it.
Yes.
Because you're more centered.
Yes.
You're more in contact with the artist,
Yes.
And not just like chasing down the responsibilities and the jobs and things like that. Just like getting up for you is super important.
Yes, the purpose is not waking up for the job. The purpose is waking up for your life. I get that. I think that's truly powerful. If there could be one goal, if there could be one stage, if there could be, one part, now it's the time. Tell us.
Oh gosh, I would love to do a concert version of Sweeney Todd in Carnegie Hall.
Nice. Good choice.
With full orchestra. Like anything with a full orchestra on stage and me singing just makes me cry already because all of my worlds are coming together. So that would just be the coolest. That would just be the coolest.
What is your favorite classical piece of music?
Rhapsody in Blue, Gershwin.
Oh, beautiful. Gershwin. So powerful. My goodness. I saw him when he was little. He deeply impressed me. It's like incredible stuff. Incredible stuff. Let's say you have a time machine. You fly back in time and you meet your younger self. Sidonie, watch out. Don't do this or do that. What would you tell your younger self?
I would tell my younger self, you are right. Period. We were talking about, making choices to like, am I going to sit on the couch tonight or am I going to work toward my dream? And I wanted to say to anybody out there, if you have this inkling in you that you're brilliant, it's because you're right. If you have this little tiny flame inside of you that says, I should pursue this or that, or I should take a risk, I should upload this or that, you're right. You're right. And it doesn't matter what the other voices are saying. If they're saying you're not strong enough, you're not brave enough, you're not good enough, listen to you. And so I would say, little Sidonie, the thing that you're thinking, the idea that you actually have a huge, huge potential and huge life out in front of you, you're totally right. It's not arrogant, it's authentic, and it's right.
I think the other way around is arrogant, to say, no, I'm not right for this, right? To exclude yourself, right, from the creative part, to say, no, I can't really, contribute with something out of meaning for this. No, this is arrogance, because now you're taking what has been given to you from the universe, you know, you're taking that and basically you're trashing it. And that's arrogant because you're not treating it with respect. Treating it with respect means that, yes, I can make a contribution. I don't know right now exactly how it looks, but I will make sure that my contribution, that my little blip in this ocean will be there, will be present. Yeah. And that's not arrogance. It's just, you know, the fulfillment of that responsibility that for your creativity.
I agree.
I thought about your name, and I'm deeply into history. And there is this thing like Sidon. It was one of the first cities that ever been founded on planet Earth. Like the patriarch of Sidon was also the founder of Sidon. Sidon himself was the seventh patriarch of Jerusalem. And there's so much history, and also the longitudes, the geographical placement, the geographic placement of Sidon, which is in today's Lebanon on the 33rd parallel. It has very mysterious and very interesting history. But there's actually one book that presents this new type of evidence that says Sidon doesn't mean anything else than Poseidon. It means all those that came out of the sea. They're the children of the sea, the children of Poseidon, of Neptune, the guy with the trident, who was actually the ruler of Atlantis. So it's that heritage of that golden ancient civilization, of that spirit now that is kind of echoing through the ancient books and the ancient stories. So Sidonie is nothing else than the ancestor of Atlantis. It's something that is the descendant of that golden spirit. And if I look at you and I look at your career and I look at everything that you touch and how you kind of transform it, I pretty much believe that it's like that. Yeah, it's your name is really telling that ancient story, that we all have that golden core inside of ourselves that maybe we can't fully grasp it because part of the knowledge is lost, or partially because it's so obfuscated in that mist of myth and legend. But there is something true about each and every legend. And storytelling is about finding that core of those old legends and displaying them, making them come true.
Wow. My goodness. Thank you for sharing that with me.
Absolutely.
Names are important, and I had to, because it's a unusual name. In all of the countries I've lived, it's an unusual name. I had to come into my own with my name, and decide to live it and be it and own it. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. I think our community, our respective communities, learned a lot today, and they can drain so many positive insights, and they can really well upon those incredible experiences you've made and that incredible radiant personality that you are, and believing in your product and overcoming the obstacles and pushing forward no matter what, and choosing the right people for your path and making it come true. Because in the end, it's about building that, that wall, building that house, building that structure, brick by brick, belief by belief, experience by experience. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So creative community, thank you so much for watching and sticking with us till the end. It was a great pleasure sharing this Talks on Acting with the wonderful Sidonie Smith. It's just incredible how captivating she is and inspiring she is. I highly recommend you to look up her content. We'll include all the links. And if you are in the Germany area and if you want to see an amazing show, just go to one of her musicals, enjoy her on stage, and get some of her energy, some of her radiant personality into your system and learn through that. Subscribe to Sidonie's content, subscribe to our channel, share this to your community, because ultimately our mission here at the Coach MC Studio is to create a thriving community of great artists for ever better performances, truly remarkable performances. Smash the bell to get notified every time we grind out a new video, and see you next time with the next Talks on Acting. Now you're ready to perform.